Caitlin Clark stimulus package, also known as the newly agreed upon CBA deal. Make no mistake about it, folks. Every time the owners came to the table and said, fine, we'll increase the salary cap to this, you can thank Caitlin Clark. Every time the owner said, fine, we'll pay for your housing again, you can thank Caitlin Clark. Every time the owner said, shoot, we really don't want to come up off this 15% number, but you know what? We'll move a little bit. You can thank CC.
Aya Wilson never saw this coming, and neither did many of the people who spent the past 2 years insisting that the Caitlin Clark phenomenon was nothing more than media hype. They argued that the attention surrounding Clark would eventually fade, that television ratings would return to normal, and that the WNBA had already built its own stars long before Clark arrived. According to that narrative, the league didn't need one player to drive its future. But reality has unfolded very differently. The WNBA has now secured the largest collective bargaining agreement in the history of professional women's basketball, a milestone that reflects the league's unprecedented growth and financial momentum. Whether supporters want to admit it or not, the conversation surrounding Caitlin Clark has become impossible to ignore. If you're enjoying this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Believe it or not, more than 83% of viewers still haven't subscribed. It's completely free, takes just a second, and it helps the channel more than you know. If you've already subscribed, thank you so much for your support. Now, let's get back to the story.
A'ja Wilson and all her Glazers could give a big thank you to Caitlin Clark for her getting paid. Ever since the league came to an agreement, all we've been hearing about is how A'ja Wilson is about to sign this historic Supermax deal like she just did it all on her own. No, you could thank Caitlin Clark for revolutionizing the game so you could get paid. We don't care how many MVPs and championships A'ja won or how she was already known. It doesn't matter. She didn't change the dynamic of the league for the players to get paid like.
Then the numbers started coming out, and that's when the entire conversation changed. The league's salary cap reportedly jumped from roughly $1.5 million to $7 million, signaling a massive financial leap for the WNBA. Average player salaries were projected to rise from around $120,000 to more than $600,000, while the minimum salary climbed above $300,000. These weren't small raises. They represented the kind of life-changing money veteran players have been fighting for long before Caitlin Clark ever entered the league. But one figure immediately grabbed everyone's attention. Clark's reported salary increase from $78,066 in 2025 to approximately $530,000 in 2026. That single comparison spread across social media within minutes, igniting heated debates among fans and commentators alike. Suddenly, what had started as a discussion about a new labor agreement turned into another flashpoint in the ongoing conversation surrounding Caitlin Clark's impact on the league. The reaction was immediate, and before long, it felt like the entire basketball world was on fire.
Example, 2024 Rookie of the Year Caitlin Clark, who made $78,066 in 2025, is poised to see her salary jump to $530,000 in 2026. So this year, she is about to jump to that salary, okay? Now, the other jump, the new provision would also be applicable to younger stars such as Aaliyah Boston, who is max eligible in 2026, and Paige Beckers, who is max eligible in.
Here's what actually happened. Everyone involved in women's basketball knew that a new collective bargaining agreement between the WNBA and the Players Association was on the horizon, and negotiations stretched over an exhausting 17 months. The old CBA had become outdated. It was built for a league that was still fighting for attention and financial stability, not for one negotiating billion-dollar media rights, selling out arenas across the country, and setting television viewership records that would have seemed impossible just a few years earlier. The league had entered an entirely different era, and its economic structure had to evolve with it. Behind nearly every major growth metric, every business meeting, and every executive discussion was one undeniable reality. The WNBA's popularity had reached unprecedented levels. That explosive momentum gave the Players Association far greater leverage at the negotiating table than ever before, allowing them to push for historic gains that simply wouldn't have been possible under the league's previous financial landscape.
Was because of Caitlin Clark's impact. All of the numbers and the metrics that the players could point to. Oh, do you see these ratings? Well, Caitlin Clark effect. Oh, do you see this attendance? Well, Caitlin Clark effect. Do you see the social media impressions? Well, Caitlin Clark effect. This is called the Caitlin Clark stimulus package, and it will go down.
When a new collective bargaining agreement was unveiled in March 2026, it introduced a provision that quickly became one of the most talked about parts of the deal. Officially known as the EPIC Clause, short for Exceptional Performance on Initial Contract, it created a fast-track compensation system for players whose impact dramatically changes the league's financial outlook before their rookie contracts expire. The language of the agreement never mentions Caitlin Clark by name, but it didn't have to. Everyone involved in women's basketball understood exactly why the provision existed and who had inspired it. In many ways, the EPIC Clause serves as the league's formal acknowledgement that not every player generates the same level of business impact. Some athletes create extraordinary value through attendance, television ratings, sponsorships, and fan engagement, and a new system was designed to recognize those rare cases. It was the WNBA's way of putting into writing that exceptional circumstances sometimes require exceptional rules.
So this WNBA collective bargaining agreement will fast-track the ability for players on a rookie-scale contract to make maximum and supermax salaries, sources told ESPN. The new provision, called EPIC, Exceptional Performance on Initial Contract, allows players to renegotiate their 4-year salary and earn the standard max that that year if they were previously an all-WNBA first team or second team, or the supermax if they won.
The numbers tell this story better than any opinion ever could, so let's put them on the table. In 2025, Caitlin Clark helped push the WNBA past 1 million viewers per game for the first time since 2008. She packed opposing arenas that hadn't sold out in years, drove television ratings whenever her name appeared on the schedule, and generated more attention than anyone else in the league. Yet despite all of that, her salary was just $78,066. That's roughly what a mid-level paralegal earns, or an entry-level marketing professional working behind a desk. It wasn't remotely close to what a rookie in the NBA, NFL, or Major League Baseball could expect to make. Meanwhile, Clark was breaking assist records, selling jerseys at an unprecedented pace, and bringing millions of new viewers to women's basketball. Her impact on the league was unlike anything the WNBA had experienced before. Yet the league was paying its biggest attraction a salary that many argued didn't come close to reflecting the value she created. It wasn't simply a compensation issue. It became a symbol of how dramatically the business had outgrown its old financial structure. Clark understood the math, the sports world understood the math, and eventually the league did too. In many ways, the new collective bargaining agreement was the WNBA's public acknowledgement that the old model could no longer keep up with the league's new reality.
What has now happened is, because of the quote-unquote EPIC rule, I'm going to call it the Caitlin rule, because let's be real, she was the first person to have reached this. Whether it be it's Caitlin, Aaliyah, and Paige are all eligible. I'm just going to call it the Caitlin rule. Just like the old Rose rule in the NBA, we're going to call it the Caitlin rule. So, ironically, if Caitlin goes and wins MVP this year, she's actually eligible for the Superman.
By 2026, that was no longer the reality. Clark's salary skyrocketed by more than 500%, climbing to approximately $530,000, nearly 6 times what she had earned the previous season. At first glance, that sounds like the league finally made things right. But before giving the WNBA too much credit, take a closer look. Even at $530,000, Caitlin Clark remains one of the biggest bargains in all of professional team sports. In 2025 alone, she reportedly generated $16.1 million through her salary, endorsement deals, public appearances, speaking engagements, and commercial partnerships with brands like Nike, State Farm, Gatorade, Wilson, and others. She became the sixth highest paid female athlete in the world. Yet the WNBA itself contributed less than 1% of her total earnings. Think about that for a moment. The league was benefiting from franchise-changing value while paying her a salary that no business school professor could defend with a straight face. Yes, the jump to $530,000 is real, and it's certainly progress. But even that figure falls far short of reflecting Clark's true market value to television networks, corporate sponsors, merchandise sales, and every arena that instantly sells out the moment her name appears on the schedule. The raise wasn't generous. It was overdue. If anything, it was simply the minimum the league had to do to stop embarrassing itself.
The team is structured. In order for this team to remain intact, Sophie would have to be willing to take a league minimum kind of deal, which is around $300,000. And I don't see that happening. Okay. And I believe also people are going to be shocked how much money Lexi Hull is about to be offered, because I think she's going to get offered $600,000 to $700,000 by somebody. And that is going to greatly complicate things.
This is where the story shifts from a celebration to a complicated financial puzzle. Salaries don't magically increase without consequences. When Caitlin Clark's pay jumps from $78,000 to roughly $530,000, that money has to come from somewhere. And in the WNBA, it comes out of the team's salary cap. Under the new collective bargaining agreement, the league's salary cap has risen to approximately $7 million per team. The Indiana Fever must use that budget to build an entire championship-caliber roster, not just pay one superstar. Every contract counts, from the franchise cornerstone to the last player on the bench. Clark's new deal alone now accounts for more than 7% of the team's total payroll before future extensions, max contracts, or the difficult offseason decisions that will ultimately shape the roster around her. When your franchise player finally starts earning closer to what she's worth while several other key players become eligible for new deals at the same time, there's a name for what happens next. It's called a salary cap squeeze, and the Indiana Fever are likely to feel every bit of that pressure in the years ahead.
They would have had Kelsey Mitchell on here, because after last season, I mean, look, Kelsey finished what, third or fourth in the MVP voting? This is her contract to make as much money as she possibly can, I believe, in this league. And come next year, because I don't think that the Fever are going to be able to keep her next season. And one could argue, depending on how much you covet depth on a team, like how deep do you want your team to be? I think one could argue against re-signing Kelsey Mitchell this year.
The national media doesn't talk nearly enough about Kelsey Mitchell, so let's change that for a moment. She remains one of the most dangerous scoring guards in the WNBA and is widely considered the Indiana Fever's second most important player. But under the new collective bargaining agreement, keeping her in Indiana has become significantly more expensive. Before the 2025 season, Mitchell entered free agency, and the Fever used the core designation to retain her on a one-year deal. Under the new CBA, that designation could push her salary to around $1.4 million, essentially a supermax-level contract and a fair price for a player of her caliber. The challenge is that one contract alone would consume roughly 20% of Indiana's new $7 million salary cap. Then there's Aaliyah Boston, who is also eligible for a major new contract, while Caitlin Clark becomes eligible for a 3-year deal worth approximately $1.3 million in 2027 under the Epic Clause, potentially rising to a $1.7 million supermax extension in 2028. Take a second to add those numbers together. Clark, Mitchell, and Boston would account for well over half of the Fever's entire salary cap. And that's before filling out the rest of the starting lineup, signing quality role players, adding a reliable backup point guard, or building the depth that separates playoff teams from championship contenders. Those are the calculations facing Indiana's front office. From the perspective of a $7 million budget, a historic jump in player salaries also creates one of the biggest roster-building challenges the franchise has ever faced.
Kelsey Mitchell to take a one-year deal instead of a multi-year deal is due to this. Aaliyah Boston is eligible for the Supermax this year. The following year, Caitlin Clark is eligible for a Supermax, which could be worth $1.7 million, actually close to $2 million. So, who are you going to invest in? Kelsey Mitchell or Caitlin Clark? And that's why I say, don't play this game, Fever. I'm talking to organizations. I'm talking to Amber Cox, Kelly Crosskoff, and definitely Stephanie White. Don't mess this up, please, for the love of God. Do not mess this up. I don't mind if Kelsey Mitchell comes back for 1 year, but 1 year only.
Every major professional sports league has gone through this at some point. When a franchise player becomes worth more than almost anyone else on the roster, a salary cap squeeze is almost inevitable. First, you find your cornerstone. Then you build the team around that player. Eventually, the superstar earns the massive raise they've unquestionably earned. A raise backed by every attendance report, every television rating, every sponsorship deal, and every financial spreadsheet in the front office. But sooner or later, reality catches up with the dream. The salary cap can't keep every key contributor at full market value forever. Tough decisions become unavoidable. Valuable role players leave, roster depth begins to disappear, and the team that once won with a deep, balanced rotation slowly becomes more top-heavy. Every offseason brings another difficult contract decision and, often, another painful goodbye. That's the challenge every championship contender eventually faces. Caitlin Clark absolutely deserves her new contract, and the numbers make that impossible to argue against. At the same time, the Indiana Fever are almost certain to experience a salary cap squeeze in the years ahead. Those two facts don't contradict each other. They're simply two sides of the same story.
Mindset of just be grateful for what you have. No, we need to dive into it. We need to have better workplaces, practice facilities, and it's not just for the women of the league now. We're talking about the women coming up, the future. We want them to have a safe space to where they can perform at a high level and get that revenue share and to live on a salary that is what they've earned.
That's livable.
That is livable.
You don't have to go over to Europe, go to other.
And then there's Aya Wilson, whose name is impossible to leave out of any serious conversation about money in the WNBA. She's a three-time MVP, an Olympic gold medalist, a WNBA champion, and one of the most accomplished players the league has ever seen. Her resume speaks for itself. Yet over the past 2 years, she has watched Caitlin Clark enter the league and completely reshape the business side of women's basketball, attracting record-breaking endorsement deals, unprecedented media attention, and financial opportunities unlike anything the sport had seen before. Despite everything Wilson has achieved on the court, she has never matched that level of commercial success off it. The contrast became even more noticeable when Sportico released its list of the world's highest-paid female athletes in 2025. Caitlin Clark reportedly appeared with earnings of $16.1 million, while Wilson didn't make the list at all. The reaction that followed was impossible to miss: subtle social media posts, carefully worded interviews, and comments that hinted at frustration without directly naming anyone. Anyone who had followed Wilson's long-standing discussions about recognition, respect, and player compensation understood exactly what she was talking about. For years, she had been one of the league's strongest voices advocating for higher salaries. Then, after the new collective bargaining agreement finally arrived, the headline wasn't about a veteran finally cashing in. It was that a player with only 2 professional seasons had become one of the highest-paid players in WNBA history. That's a reality that isn't always easy to accept, even when the business numbers clearly explain why it happened.
Indiana Fever guard Caitlin Clark, speaking from experience, players like me are going to be the ones that I think feel it the most, and that's what I think we're all super proud of, because that's what we set out from the beginning, was making sure every player felt a change in the CBA, and that's exactly what has happened. New York Liberty forward Breanna Stewart, the deal is going to be transformational. It's going to build up and help create a system where everybody's getting exactly what they deserve, and more from on the court and the off court aspects. Just excited that we can tell our fans that we're going.
But this is the reality the WNBA's veteran generation is eventually going to have to accept. It may sound harsh, but it's also the economic truth behind the league's new direction. The new collective bargaining agreement doesn't distribute money based on seniority, loyalty, or the number of MVP trophies sitting on a player's shelf. It rewards market impact. That's exactly why the Epic Clause exists, to recognize the rare players whose presence dramatically changes the league's value to television networks, advertisers, sponsors, and millions of casual fans who may have never watched a WNBA game before. The traditional rookie salary system was never built to account for that kind of influence. Aya Wilson has dominated the league for years. She's an all-time great, a champion, and one of the finest players women's basketball has ever produced. But despite her incredible resume, she never single-handedly triggered record-breaking media deals, pushed regular season broadcasts past 1 million viewers on an ordinary weeknight, or consistently sold out opposing arenas simply because her name appeared on the schedule. Caitlin Clark has done those things repeatedly. That doesn't automatically make her the better basketball player. It's a reflection of economic impact, not basketball ability. And when a league is growing as rapidly as the WNBA is today, market value becomes one of the biggest drivers of player compensation. The league that exists today was built by its veteran stars, and they deserve enormous credit for that foundation. But Caitlin Clark has become one of the biggest forces accelerating its business growth. Both of those realities can be true at the same time, even if only one of them ultimately reshaped the league's new pay structure.